was this mysterious stranger that became one with the night, understood its grace and mystery so well that it took its colors as his own? Who was John Atkinson Grimshaw? A Leeds-born artist creating in the distant 19th century Victorian era. Looking at his atmospheric paintings, one cannot help feel dreamy going back in time. Throughout his career, he was always attracted by ships, the sea, and docks. In fact, all things maritime, where the pride and energy of the time was felt the most.
This is the Mercer Art Gallery in Harrogate, and we have two really outstanding paintings by Atkinson Grimshaw, who was of course born in Leeds, but the thing was there were a lot of wealthy collectors of Grimshaw in the north of England, particularly in Yorkshire, and in fact in Harrogate there was a collector who was Grimshaw's greatest collector, and he owned over 80 paintings by him, so he was probably working for him quite a lot. And the two paintings we have show Atkinson Grimshaw working in his most celebrated style, which is this what caused him to be called painter of moonlight. So he is he manages to capture this wonderful sense of the moonlight, and there's usually this tracery of there are trees in the painting, so there's a tracery of branches in silhouette. But above all, really, I always think, and the reason why people love these pictures is because of the atmosphere he creates. He was a contemporary artist. It sounds odd, doesn't it? But there was one subject in particular, and that's in our painting here, and our painting is called Silver Moonlight. And it's just mysterious, and you've got this solitary figure of a young girl. Probably the way she's dressed, she's probably a servant, she works in one of the big houses, that's what you tend to think about her. And she's walking along this wet road, winter time, no leaves on the trees, and her little figure is picked out by the moonlight. Very mysterious, and I think another people love these pictures is because they would seem to have a story in them, and that's why they like them. As well as obviously the way that they're painted and the way they are very delicately painted and very detailed. In fact, the paint is very thin when you get to look at them close to, and very precisely described. So this is a very famous picture by Atkinson Grimshaw. It's very popular and extremely well known. And the way it's framed there in that big gold frame, very grand, is that it was intended to be a real exhibition piece. It was one of his top price range. This painting is interesting because it's got two titles. It's painted around the same time as the Silver Moonlights. It's the same size, you can see it's got a very similar frame, and it is a kind of autumn afternoon. You can imagine an afternoon in November in England. When it was acquired by the Harrogate Art Gallery, they actually decided to give it a new name, and they called it a Yorkshire home, and that's what it says on the plaque on the front of the picture. But if you're a curator, you obviously get to see a painting from every angle, and Grimshaw was in the habit of writing the titles of his pictures on the back of his paintings, and on the back of his painting, in his handwriting, it says in the gloaming, because it's a picture about light. It's not about the house, it's about, and the gloaming means dusk or the light fading, so that's the real title. So we've given it its old title back, And again, that's very, very atmospheric. Grimshaw was from a sort of, not from a very wealthy family, a sort of fairly ordinary, not so well-off family in Leeds, and his parents really didn't want him to be an artist because they didn't think it was a very safe and secure job, and so he got a job on the railways, which of course at that point, you know, in the sort of early to mid 19th century, the railways was the new technology, and so he was really lucky to get this wonderful job working on the railways. But really his great love was with painting. He used to draw and paint all the time, and there's stories of his mother burning his paints in the fireplace to stop him. Don't know if that's true or not, but he was certainly determined to be an artist, and his escape from his family was actually to get married quite young. And his wife Fanny encouraged him to really work at being an artist, and so he started to show his work, because if you are an artist, even then, you know, there were early exhibitions in Leeds. He could show his work, and he gradually acquired wealthy local businessmen who really liked his paintings, and so they would buy them from him, and he began to do really quite well. And he started off, he painted first of all in a kind of pre-Raphaelite style. Then he moved into this style he's known for, of painting the moonlight effect. And then also, very sadly, his children, in 1 year, 3 of them died. It was all very sadly died of the diphtheria. And so he thought, well, we must get away from here, it's not as healthy. And they went to live in Scarborough by the sea. But he worked harder and harder in his life to make paintings. He was successful in the north of England, but he was never successful in London, which is where he really had to be to make money. He died only in his 50s, and his wife and family were left with nothing really. Victorian painting went out of fashion, you know, as we moved into the 20th century. But when it came into fashion again in the late 50s, 1960s, Atkinson Grimshaw found fame again, and now he is one of the most desirable artists there is.
Taking a walk with Grimshaw, the misty, damp Victorian cities magically transform under the moonlit golden beams and the gaslight glow into pictures caring about the spirit of the era. One can see his paintings like poems praising the industrial change. It could be claimed the 1870s was Grimshaw's most flourishing decade, a gateway from recent tragedies not long after he acquired his castle by the sea, nested off the cliff with a breathtaking view of both bays in Scarborough. It seems the move to the coast inspired much of the artist's most praised work. Maybe light is all too hectic, too much for our minds. In the calmness, the simplicity of the night, we could see beauty that remains unnoticed during the daytime. Probably back then there were those who did not admire the dusty industrial landscapes, but Atkinson refused to be one of them. He saw magnificent lights playing with shadows. He heard secrets the gloomy sea was telling and painted it all. The nuances were missing the immense beauty surrounding us, if only we let ourselves see.